All right, we're going to give it a shot again. As we take a look here and trying to get things started, we've signed off and signed back on to see if we can make some sense out of this. So, high school football, Alabama. Need some comments there if we are upside down or how we're sitting, because it seems like we change this every week. So we're hoping now we're making some sense here. So we're waiting for the go-ahead. And we will welcome in any comments that you have. All right, here's what we're going to do. Now, we should be straightened up maybe now. We'll see how that goes.
There we go.
Let's see. We'll adjust it here on this screen, and then maybe we'll see if we're hanging in there. Let's get another broadcast going here in just a second. So, look at that. See?
There we go.
Okay, so here's the deal. The earlier I get here, the worse it goes. I don't understand. If I'm running late, I'm always doing a little better. I'm seeing you there. That's a little better. And that's our friend up at Briarwood Christian. Hey, big game for you coming up this week. How about that?
Briarwood Christian, an impressive shutout over Etowah last week in the 5A quarterfinals, 31-0. Very good Etowah team who was probably playing their best offense of the year. And Briarwood with another shutout. Great defense they've got there. Good offense as well. And Briarwood now with another rematch as they've got St. Clair County, who, if you came to me, Tommy, in July and said, well, John, I want to tell you, St. Clair County is going to be in the 5A North Alabama Championship game.
Right.
I probably would have tried to take some of your money then. Not a betting man, but that would have been a safe bet. There's no way St. Clair County, of all the teams in North Alabama in 5A, that St. Clair County would be one of the two teams left, but they are. They are in a rematch. Last week they were in a rematch with Winona. Winona beat them 3 touchdowns in the regular season. They went to double overtime last week and won the game over Winona to get revenge. Now another team that beat them in the regular season, and Briarwood going to Briarwood to play. Can St. Clair County do it again? Matt Glover in his first year has done an outstanding job, but this is a different. This is a totally different deal here with Briarwood. Briarwood, I think, probably the best team they've had in a decade.
Right.
And playing at home, and now they know there's not going to be any surprises. They know that St. Clair County, what they're capable of. So you know that Coach Fred Yancey and the Lions will be well prepared for that game. But it should be a great game though in that 5A rematch between St. Clair County and Briarwood.
And before we get really deep into the playoff picture, of course, this week all the state championships will be decided as we get ready for the Super 7. John and I kind of want to let you know our role when it comes to the Super 7. And he and I both have the opportunity to work with the Alabama High School Athletic Association radio network. So our broadcast will be heard throughout the state of Alabama next week as we make our trip to Tuscaloosa. We've been able to broadcast there several times. As far as the live coverage, play-by-play, and color, I'll do play-by-play. He does color for the 3A and the 4A games. As far as the 7A game, not sure what my role is going to be there. But then as far as the other games on Thursday and Friday, we both work some on the sideline. We both do some halftime stuff. But we really get the opportunity to go over and take in all 7 games. And, man, it's a blast every year to work with a lot of great people. And the AHSA Radio Network really opens our arms to us and let us go do some ball games. So you'll see us in Tuscaloosa next week, and we look forward to bringing you high school football.
Yeah, we've been doing that for a lot of years. I don't know how many years. I've lost count of how many years we've been doing that with the AHSA Radio Network. Great coverage. I think when we're not doing games, we'll be on the sidelines doing games. I think you'll probably have the 5A, 6A on the sidelines. Right. So, Mr. Tranrino, you'll probably check out Tommy on the sidelines. I may be down there with him. And then also, we've got, I'll be on the 1A, 2A.
Right. And here's the thing. If you see me at the 5A and the 6A game, you may not recognize me because I'm going to be bundled up according to what the weather's showing for next week. It's supposed to turn cold. So, we'll look forward to that coming up next week. But we will be in Tuscaloosa, which is always a lot of fun. So, look forward to seeing some of you guys out there as we get ready for the Super 7. So, let's take a look now at the teams that are already in. Of course, the 7A has already been decided. You got Hoover and McGill-Toolen. I had a chance to go down to the Athletic Association over the weekend and talk to both coaches. Obviously, very excited about being there. And, you know, you talk about McGill-Toolen and Hoover. those programs seem to get there every year, but there's a new excitement, I guess, every season, especially with the new coach at McGill-Toolen. Man, what a great job he's done. What a great person. And that's going to be a lot of fun. They kick it off on Wednesday night with those two teams.
Hey, you were very impressed. You were telling me with Ernest Hill, the new
Absolutely.
coach at McGill-Toolen. So McGill trying to get there and knock off Hoover. A lot of folks there, I guess the freshness comes from a lot of people with Hoover with 3 losses, especially that loss to Thompson, thought that maybe the Hoover Invitational would be off this year.
That's right.
But the Hoover Invitational is again back on. And so Hoover with Josh Nibwood, who's won multiple state championships, of course, bringing Hoover back to Bryant-Denny Stadium against McGill-Toolen. So a lot of orange, which folks in Tuscaloosa are not accustomed to seeing a lot of orange in Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Learn to love it. Learn to love it.
There'll be a lot of orange at Bryant-Denny Stadium as we go into Wednesday night. That's the Wednesday night game. That'll be the very first game of the Super 7 championships.
That will kick us off. Now, let's take a look at some of the other classifications that will be determined tomorrow night. First off, we'll move down 1 notch to Class 6A. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa at Wetumpka. Of course, Hillcrest 10-3, Wetumpka 12-1. Another team that if you'd asked me after week 1 what I thought, because I had a chance to see Hillcrest in that first game, and I was thinking, hey, I don't know how good Hillcrest is going to be. Well, here they are, 1 win from the state championship.
Yeah, it's amazing. This is a team that started off this season, I believe, 0-2. And then they had a 21-0 loss. You did the game.
Yeah.
You saw them against Oxford.
Not a first down.
They were pretty much dominated. And after that night, again, this is why it's such a long season. It goes by so fast. But that night in August at Lamar Field in Oxford, if you would have asked anybody following 6A football, well, hey, Hillcrest is going to be in the South Alabama Championship game, they would have said no. But we have mentioned all year long on this program that we felt like there were 12 to 13 teams in 6A, and I don't think there's any other class that realistically could say that.
Right.
Where 12 or 13 teams could make it conceivably to the state championship game in 6A. And I think when you start looking at the 6A bracket here, as I pull that out, Hillcrest, Wetumpka, Pinson Valley, Clay Chalkville. At the beginning of the season, none of those 4 teams, Tommy, no one thought any of those 4 teams would be in the semifinals. And, you know, you could go back to the quarterfinals, the Opelika's, the Spanish Forts, the Austins, the Oxfords, the Clay Chalkvilles. Any of those teams could have very easily been there. And I think you even go back to the second round. And you look at folks like Saraland and Park Crossing and Sidney Lanier and Ramsey, who was the defending state champion, and Homewood and Muscle Shoals. I mean, all of those teams, if they, certain things happen, ball bounces the right way, could have conceivably got on that hot streak and gotten there. So I really still believe 6A is the most, and it has been this way for the last 3 or 4 years, has been the most interesting to watch in the playoffs because there's so many good teams balanced out between North and South also.
You know, and you talk about that. Neither of these teams, we talked about how Hoover and McGill-Toolen have been there before. Neither Hillcrest or Wetumpka has ever played for a state championship. So very interesting there as far as in the Super 7. So going to be very interesting. One of these teams will be a new appearer at the championship.
And the same way for, now, Clay Chalkville obviously has been there and won state championships, but it's the same way with Pinson Valley.
Exactly.
Pinson Valley, this is the furthest they've ever been. This is the best season by far in Pinson Valley history. So, you've got a lot of fresh blood in 6A, and that maybe was the one classification where we didn't think we'd see a lot of fresh blood because, I'll be honest, first of the season, I'm thinking about Spanish Fort.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about Austin, who came in with a lot of high recommendations over the summer, what they had coming back. Your Opelika's, the world, Oxford, all these teams that we thought of in the summer, none of those are still alive. The teams that are alive, the teams that kind of, some of these teams not even state ranked at the end of the regular season, state ranked.
You look at this, and as you said, Clay Chalkville, Pinson Valley, they have played earlier this year, and Pinson Valley wins 34-32. That was back in week 4. They will play again tomorrow night, this game at Pinson Valley, because they won the region, and they will be playing for the right to go to the state championship. And I get the opportunity, looking forward to that, as I got the call over the weekend to come and do some help with the broadcast there. So I'll be doing color with Jerry Young and the folks at the NFHS TV network. So I'll be doing that game. Going to be a lot of fun. Saw Clay Chalkville play last week. I've seen highlights and some footage, a lot of footage on Pinson Valley this week, and that is going to be a fun game to do tomorrow night.
Clay Chalkville and Pinson Valley, a 34-32 game. The first time the school's about, 5 miles apart, just over the mountain from each other. In the same region, big rivals. All the kids know each other. It's kind of amazing that you go through the entire, we talked about this a little bit last week, you go through the entire 6A North bracket of the playoffs, and it comes down to 2 teams that are 5 miles apart.
Yeah.
And then Pinson Valley coming off you might could turn it an upset. I really don't think it was. But they came from behind. They trailed just about the entire night, 51-50 in overtime up at Ogle Stadium in Decatur against Austin. Number 1 versus number 3 matchup. They beat the number 1 team. And the thing about it was, 7 touchdown passes from Bo Nix. And I think this is probably going to go down as one of the all-time great high school football games, period, in the state of Alabama history. 51-50 in overtime. Just a great, high school, we'll call it an instant classic high school football game.
So in 6A, you got Hillcrest Tuscaloosa at Wetumpka and Clay Chalkville at Pinson Valley tomorrow night. Moving to Class 5A, St. Paul's at Demopolis. St. Paul's 12-1. They will be at Demopolis 11-2. They have met in the playoffs in 2013, 15, and now 17. St. Paul's has defeated Demopolis every time.
And, Demopolis is one of those teams, again, beginning of the season. Demopolis got a lot of tradition, but I'm not sure that anybody thought that they were a serious state title contender. Even, again, at the end of the regular season, after going through 11 weeks of high school football, the sports writers had them ranked at number 10. A couple of losses there. That's not the team that you're sitting there at the 1st of November and you're looking at who might be in Tuscaloosa, looking through the brackets. You're not looking at a number 10 ranked team who's got a couple of losses as one of the favorites to get there, but now Demopolis is 1 win away from being there. And you throw in a first-year head coach on top of that.
That's right.
That makes it even more impressive.
Yeah, St. Clair County taking on Briarwood Christian. Of course, Briarwood 13-0, St. Clair 10-3. Like you said, St. Clair's best playoff run since 1993. They've never made this far.
And the big thing that you talk about with St. Clair County is, and it's a big key of why they're there, is that huge nose guard being recruited by everyone. Folks say he's probably going to Alabama. A guy named Jalen Cunningham, 6'6", 350 pounds in the center there. I saw him last year, middle of the season last year, when nobody really knew who he was, saw him play. He's one of those guys that when you walk on the field, it is like, wow, who is that guy?
Yeah.
Because there's just not many high school football players in Alabama that are 6'6", 350, and has feet, can move. I mean, this is not a big Mount Cody type person that just kind of clogs up the middle. This is a guy who's big and athletic and has some speed and can play.
Talk about this. Got a rematch in this game. Of course, you had Briarwood getting the 31-6 win earlier this year. What kind of role does that play? A lot of folks have talked, of course, SEC Championship, different games this weekend. You play in a team twice, and you always say, it's so hard to beat a team 2 times in a row. A 25-point differential, when I look at those factors, sometimes you go, okay, well, maybe it's not as big a deal. But if it's a tight game, to me it seems like advantage may go to the team that lost. But if it's a 2 to 3 touchdown win, I think you go with the team that won it big last time.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think when if it's a situation where the team you feel like they're just kind of lucky to be there, and you kind of overlook them, that's when that second one. But I don't think Briarwood is going to overlook them because of what happened. Because now all Coach Yancey has to do is go in there and say, guys, Winona beat them 26-7 just about a month ago.
That's right.
And in 1 month, they turned a 19-point, really 20-point turnaround. They went from scoring 7 points to scoring 27 points in a month. Their offense did. Yeah. This is also the same team that you'll remember in the first round of the playoffs was a big underdog at Guntersville. Went up there, were down 21-0 at halftime, and came back and scored 28 unanswered in the second half against a team who had 5 consecutive games without giving up a point in Guntersville. So this is a dangerous St. Clair County team, and I think if all those things were not in play, I think maybe then Briarwood might overlook them. Right. But Coach Yancey is such a great coach, and he's going to use that this week. He's been preaching this since Friday night of last week when the scores came in, that, guys, you can't take them lightly.
Absolutely.
They could win. So should be a great matchup. I think St. Clair County obviously has improved. Maybe the most improved team from the end of the regular season through the playoffs of any team in the state in any classification. So I think it'll be a closer game. I don't think it'll be 31-6, but you still got to go with Briarwood, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Hey, one thing I want to tell you that a lot of folks may be tuning in and want to talk about the classifications. Of course, they came out today, the reclassifications. We're going to talk about that after we look at our playoff picture and get your opinions on some things. Maybe we'll have a chance to get you some comments you can put in there. So we'd love to know where you're watching us today, and if you're enjoying the program, we'd love to take your comments there as well. As we continue to roll through, we'll look at Class 4A, UMS Riot at Andalusia, another rematch, and Sachs at Fayette County coming up tomorrow night.
Well, this is a rematch of the regular season game where Andalusia won by a point, I believe.
27-21, a touchdown, yeah, six.
Touchdown. And it was an overtime,
exactly.
I believe, at Andalusia
right.
the first time. The first time ever in history that Andalusia had beaten UMS.
That's right.
13, I think, consecutive times previously that UMS had won. So here's the rematch. It's back at Andalusia. Mm-hmm. Andalusia is still ranked number one in the state. Their only loss, I think, was to Shades Valley. Mm-hmm. It was a pretty doggone good 6A team early in the season. And then, of course, UMS has gone on, and they lost, I think, St. Paul's in the Battle of Old Shell Road. So St. Paul's and Andalusia, their only two losses. So here's the rematch coming up again. This is one of those games where it is hard to beat a team twice because the first game could have gone either way.
Right.
Now UMS Wright's got all the, they had beaten them 13 times in a row. The streak's broken. Now all the pressure's on Andalusia.
That's right.
All the pressure's on Andalusia to do it again twice in one season. You haven't beaten them in all these years, and you beat them once, and they got to beat them twice to go back to the state championship game. I think this has the potential to be the best game in the state in the semifinals in the state of Alabama this week is UMS Wright and Andalusia. It is really tough. It is really tough to beat UMS twice in the season. There are a lot of teams. This is not the first time UMS has been in this situation where a team beat them in the regular season and they rematched in the playoffs. That's happened numerous times down through the years with UMS. Right. And in virtually every one of those situations, UMS has won the second time around. So a huge game down in Andalusia.
Let's talk about Sacs at Fayette County. Of course, Fayette County knocked Sacs out of the playoffs last year, and that ended the first round. And you got Sacs. This is the furthest they've been since 1996, which, of course, was the beginning of the Super Six.
Right.
And that was the first year that we had the Super Six at Legion Field. So you got a Sacs team that's really been on a roll. They're going to Fayette County, a tough place to play, and that should be a dandy of a game as well.
Last year, in the first round of the playoffs at Fayette County, Sacs won the game. I should say Fayette County won the game 20-7.
Right.
But Sacs had about 4 or 5 players that were missing from that game, including quarterback LaDerrick Bell, which is huge.
Right.
So you got Chance Stevenson, I think, is the quarterback at Fayette County. Great throwing quarterback. He's got Darius Knowles, a tremendous college prospect wide receiver. Fayette County can throw the football. They have as good of a passing game, obviously, with Lance Tucker being the head coach there. Their throw game is always top notch.
Yeah.
And they can throw the ball as well as anybody in 4A. Sacs is a team that can beat you in a number of ways, as we've talked about. They know I have LaDerrick Bell, true dual-threat quarterback, running and throwing the football. About 5 different running backs that can tote it for them. Very good wide receivers, very good defensive backs. They're a little bit small at defensive backs as far as stature-wise, and that is a concern because Knowles is about 6'2", 6'3" out there on the end, and a very good 6'2", 6'3" player. I've talked with a number of people who say from a talent standpoint, they've watched Sacs play multiple times. They have watched Fayette County play multiple times. And they think Sacs is the more talented team and Sacs should be the favorite in this game.
Right.
However, the game is at Fayette, and Fayette has been in this situation so many times. Sacs has been here. They were in the semifinals against Madison Academy, 4 years ago in Sacs. But they have nowhere near the tradition that Fayette County has.
Right.
And they have nowhere near the playoff experience that Fayette County has. So it's kind of that, the old guard traditional team, Fayette County, one of the winningest teams in state history, taking on kind of that new kid on the block in Sacs. Sacs probably with the more talent, but the more experience and home field advantage goes to Fayette County. If you try to compare scores, they have played 2 common opponents.
Right.
I guess 3 common opponents, Dora, and then also Jacksonville and Hopes Bluff. If you look at that, you probably, again, say Sacs probably should be maybe a touchdown favorite. That's what we'll go with, but do not be surprised if Fayette County wins and goes back to Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yep. Let's move to Class 3A. A couple of good ball games there. Clark County at Hillcrest Evergreen. You got Randolph County at Piedmont, and you've got pretty much a couple of rematches there in both of these games.
Rematches we've mentioned all year long in 3A. 3A Region 1, Southwest Alabama, and then basically Class 3A Region 5, Northeast Alabama, and they were the two, by far and away, the 2 dominant regions in 3A football, as evidenced by where we are here. Hillcrest Evergreen, earlier in the season, a couple of months back now, beat Clark County 22-15. Clark County, another one of those teams, maybe the most improved team from we talked about St. Clair County being the most improved team from the end of the regular season to now.
Exactly.
Maybe the most improved team in the state from the beginning of the season, from August to now, is Clark County with Stacy Luker, the job he's done there. Again, going back to can you beat a team twice? I guarantee you Clark County is going to give Hillcrest Evergreen all they want. This is the last year for both of these teams. We'll talk about this in a moment. To be in Class 3A, they are both moving up together to Class 4A next year. So there'll be a new team out of the South guaranteed next year in 3A. This is really a coin toss.
It is.
It was a coin toss game back a couple of months ago, and it's a coin toss game again. In our game in the North, last week I was at Randolph County.
Yeah.
Randolph County and Sylvania, 41-0 Randolph County at halftime.
Right.
And except for the kicking game, there's the Achilles heel for Randolph County seems to be their kicking game. Not the greatest punting game. A lot of kickoffs that go out of bounds. Missed some extra points here. Not a real threat to kick a long or even medium length field goal. Other than that, though, this Randolph County team, I mentioned last week I was looking forward to seeing them. I was very impressed.
Yeah.
They have a very good quarterback in Brody Wortham. They have 3 running. Matter of fact, their third team running back last week on the second play of the game went 84 yards for a touchdown. That's their third team running back. And the other 2 are fantastic. Then you got big offensive line, the Bledsoe kid playing tackle and nose guard, playing both ways. Aaron Knight, great running back, and also a phenomenal linebacker. Secondary is very good. They love to run the football, a power running game, but also at the same time have guys that can break it from any point on the field and take it to the house. But they also have, with Prestridge, the wide receiver, the coach's son, tall wide receiver who can go up and get it.
Ball, yeah.
And, I really think that, this game, the first time they played at Wedowee, at Hewlett Humphrey Stadium, Ron Waters Field, it was 13-0 Randolph County at the half. Piedmont scored 41 points in the second half to win it 41-31. This game, again, is at Piedmont. You would think Piedmont, being the 2-time defending state champion, would be a heavy favorite. I'm telling you, Randolph County has all the pieces in place, Tommy, to beat Piedmont.
Yeah.
They absolutely could do that. Sylvania's got a good team, but they were totally dominated. This is another game that is going to be a toss-up game.
Yeah.
I really believe it could go either way.
And you get Piedmont again, been there, done that. They're in the semifinals at home last year. We saw that game with Ohatchee, and so they've been there to experience this before. Does that give them an advantage? I tell you what, this is going to be a great game. I'm with you. I don't know who's going to win this one, but I can guarantee you it's going to be a good one.
I don't know that there's a big advantage for Piedmont in the fact that Randolph County last year was a team that went to the quarterfinals. True. You go back a couple of years before that when they were in 2A, and they were a semifinal team, went to 5 from the semifinals. So this coaching staff and a lot of these players, they've been there before. They've made deep playoff runs, so they know what it's all about. I don't think there's going to be any jitters on either side. I think this will be as good of a high school football game as there's played in the state this week in the semifinals.
All right, let's move to Class 2A and talk about the semifinals there. You got Leroy at Goshen. Leroy 11-2, Goshen 12-1, and Sulligent at Lynette. And Lynette at 13-0, Sulligent 12-1 there. So start with Sulligent Lynette. First meeting ever between the two schools. And Lynette, of course, they fell in the semifinals last year to Fife. Lynette is 0-8 all-time in semifinal games.
You look at Sulligent. Who thought last week?
Right.
That was this everywhere I've been this week. Everybody, we're not even in Fife's area, but everybody around the state knows about Fife. And everywhere I go, everybody's going, what about Fife? Can you believe that? What happened to Fife? What happened to Fife? What happened to Fife? And that was a 21-0 game at one point. Sulligent in the lead, made close at the end. Just really a dominating performance by Sulligent over the defending state champions. So Lynette is a team that they've never been to the state championship game, nor has Sulligent, nor has Goshen down the south. Now, Leroy obviously has.
They have,
great tradition there, but 3 of the 4 teams have never even been to the state championship game. Lynette, you go all the way back to the 70s when Dan Washburn was there as head football coach. I'm showing my age now.
You are.
Lynette was a team that made the semifinals a couple of times in the 70s in the old Class 3A out of 4 classifications, playing against teams like Eufaula and Demopolis and those kind of folks in the South. And they're moving down to 1A next year, Lynette is. So that, which is mind-blowing.
It is
Class 1A, look out. But, this is a Sulligent team that beat Reeltown on the road, 35-25. Lynette handled Reeltown pretty handily. Sulligent now, the confidence has got to be brimming out of the top.
That's
when
the thing.
We knew you beaten Fife, but Lynette, this is a hungry football team. It's a team who, as you said, last year got beat in the semifinals in Fife, got beat pretty handily, got embarrassed for the most part. And they feel like this is probably the best football team maybe that Lynette has had in what we would call the modern era.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a phenomenal matchup, a unique matchup because there's not a lot to compare. We didn't have a lot to compare Sulligent and Fife with. Not a lot to compare Lynette and Sulligent with. But I think it'll be a great game down at Morgan Washburn Stadium.
We're going to finish up with our look at Class 1A, and then we will move into the new reclassification. A lot of questions there, and we'll take those there on the bottom of the screen. I got someone watching from Tallahassee. Hope you're having a great day. Of course, they've got a new region to talk about next week.
New classification.
New classification. We're going to talk about that as we finish up with our look at the playoffs. Again, Class 1A, Sweetwater at Wadley. Sweetwater 11-1. They get a huge upset last week, too. They go to Wadley. This is only the second meeting between those two schools. I know.
I hate to say it. I hate to do this, but the 4. I had been calling the 4 for Maplesville all season long.
What happened?
And Sweetwater.
Yeah.
But when you put together, to me, for somebody who's been watching high school football for 50 years, when you say Sweetwater and you say Maplesville, I mean that is Alabama small school high school football powerhouses, and so we should not have been surprised that it was a great game.
Right.
And Sweetwater has such great tradition. Matter of fact, Sweetwater, to be honest with you, probably has more tradition than Maplesville.
Right, yeah.
And so no surprise, no shocker like it was with Fife that they lost that game last week. But now Sweetwater and Wadley. Last year in the second round at Wadley was undefeated again. Sweetwater came in and won the game 21-20. You know that the Wadley folks are thinking about that. My first inclination last week when I saw that the Maplesville lost and Wadley won again on the road at Ringo, my first inclination was the door is wide open for Wadley to win their first ever state championship. Wadley's never even been to the state championship game. This is the best chance. And they've had some great teams down there with Terrell Zachary and all those guys. This is, I think, is the best team that they've ever had as far as having a chance to win a state championship. But they got to get past Sweetwater. And, man, it's a scary thing to me to be in 1A football and you're thinking, well, you got to win one game to get to Tuscaloosa.
And here's who's in front of you.
And that one team is Sweetwater.
That's it. Hey, and what about the other bracket, the other game there, South Lamar at Pickens County? Pickens County, we've seen them there before. This is a rematch where Pickens won by 13 just in week 8. So it hadn't been that long ago. 41-28, Pickens got the win then.
What about these Cinderella teams out of Lamar County with Sulligent and now South Lamar? South Lamar, last year they lost in the first round of the playoffs at Spring Garden 40-14. And now they're in the state semifinals, but they lost handily the first time to Pickens County. You think Pickens County's got to be the favorite once again. Pickens County was in the state championship game last year. They have been really the dominant team in Class 1A in the North for about 4 or 5 years now. So they're the prohibitive favorite here. And but it could be whether we have a Pickens County or a South Lamar versus a Wadley or a Sweetwater state championship game next week in 1A will be fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Again, all the games next week will be at Bryant-Denny Stadium there at the University of Alabama, and John and I will be involved in the radio broadcast and hope you get a chance to tune us in next week. He and I will be doing the 3A and the 4A games, and we'll also be rotating around on the sideline at halftime of all the others, so we get a chance to spend 3 days. Now, on to what has been the story of the day in high school football in Alabama, and that is the reclassifications that came out this morning. There have been a lot of leaks over the last several days. I mean, it was like, some emails from presidential candidates as everybody kept talking about different things.
All the president's men, like one
man, everybody had this story and this one. You heard all these different things about what was going to happen today. And you get to this point, and they were finally released this morning at about 10:15, and now we're sitting here and we've learned some new terms. Competitive balance is a new term that
24 hours ago, Tommy,
we'd never heard of it.
That was not in my vocabulary, that phrase,
right.
Competitive balance. I'm sitting here thinking that the asset management team of Wood and Holder are going to tell you about your competitive balance.
We thought it was something to do with a 401k, but it's evidently something a whole lot more than that, because the way that the private schools in the state of Alabama are placed now, it's not only where they have a factor of 1.35 instead of in exchange for one actual living, breathing student. It is now how many championships you've won, how many quarterfinal trips, semifinals, and it gets kind of a gauge there. And you may be playing one sport in one classification.
Can you see that, folks? That's
it breaks it down.
You get points.
Yeah.
You get points for quarterfinal appearances, semifinal appearances, final appearances.
Yeah,
Tommy's got it all figured out.
And
he's going to explain.
No. Stacy Mills is thinking Pratt will move down to 3A for competitive balance. Wow. There may be some schools in your boat there that say, "Hey, can we move down?" I mean, and it just pertains to the private schools, because actually we've had that question.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're Hoover, or if you're Piedmont, or if you're some of these schools that have had
Maplesville.
Yeah, if you've had a few dominant years, what about that? Well, it's only pertaining to the pertaining to the private schools. So that is one term that we've learned over the last 24 hours. And, you look at that, and you've got a situation where the private schools are getting moved around in different sports. And, we do a lot with the HSAA, love the guys there. I'll just be honest, I don't totally 100% understand some of the reasoning there, because I think it gets confusing when you say I went to a 2A school, well, only in one sport, then I went to a 3A. And to me, that's kind of, when people ask me, how big is this school? Well, I always go back to their athletic thing. So now I really can't use that as a term.
Well, and another thing, too, I think that is going to be interesting is going to be maybe some of your rivalries. For instance, Jacksonville State, for many years when they went to Division I AA from Division II, they played football in one conference, in the Southland Football Conference, which was teams from Texas and Louisiana. And then in all their other sports, basketball, baseballs, etc., they played in the Atlantic Sun Conference against teams from basically Florida and Georgia and places like that. So they didn't have the same rivalries. The rivalries that carried over from football did not carry over to basketball and all that, and it's tough. And so what happens now, if you're a Madison Academy, they're a great example. There's only two schools in football. For football purposes, we'll go ahead and tell you only two schools fell under this. That was St. Paul's. They're now 6A in football, 5A in probably not every other sport.
Yeah.
Probably some multiple. In some sports, they're 5A.
Most of them,
Most of them 6A, including football. Madison Academy, same way. They are now 5A in football, 4A in some other sports. So you're playing a whole different set of teams now. Madison Academy, for instance, will now be playing totally different teams in 5A than what they'll be playing in basketball and baseball and those other sports. So it's really kind of confusing for the fans. Because you're playing these teams during football season or in basketball and baseball, and then you go to another sport and you're playing a whole other set of teams. So we're going to see what happens here and what goes on with it. But this is high school football, Alabama. So for football purposes, it only affected those two teams, St. Paul's and Madison Academy.
Yeah, and that's something that we want to make sure that we're kind of as clear as we can be on there. And again, we'll see how it goes for the next 2 years. This may be something that stays around for numerous years. It may end after the two, but it's just one of those things where the football is, because it's going to be reevaluated, and you can still move up or down, is the way I understand it.
You can keep moving up. For instance, Sacred Heart, who has won the last 3 championships in Class 1A boys basketball, moved to 2A in basketball only. Every other sport, and girls basketball also. That's another thing. If it's a co-ed sport, they move too, regardless, even though they could have not won a game, and they move anyway. There's a whole other parameter there. But they could win the 2A for the next 2 years, and then they would move to 3A, and their other sports remain 1A. And they could win the 3A, which Sacred Heart could do.
Absolutely.
And they could win the next 2 years. They could win the 3A. And then when they reclassify 4 years from now, they could beat 4A in basketball and 1A in the other sports.
Right. And they don't have football.
And that could happen with Sacred Heart.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you get a good good program started there, and you could compete 2 or 3 levels higher. We want your opinion. Any questions that you've got or any comments that you've got on the reclassifications, we can put it there on the screen. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we want to talk about some of the things that came out today. As far as Class 7A, as we said, a lot of rumors were flying around earlier this week about expanding to 48. That didn't happen, staying with 32 teams. Only a couple of teams moved into 7A, and that was Austin and Florence as they moved into Class 7A. And that's kind of the 2 teams that I saw there.
And one of the things I noticed right off the bat is one of the things that always strikes me about reclassification is not so much that they've changed classifications, 1A to 2A, 2A to 3A, whatever, but the areas that they're put into in other sports and regions in football. Mm-hmm. And the football region is going to be in Class 7A Region 4 now with Austin and Florence moving there. Mm-hmm. Gadsden City is now going to be in the same region with Florence.
Right.
That's a region game, and they're about 3 hours apart.
Yeah. So that's tough.
Very tough.
You look at that, and those were really the 2 that moved into 7A, and I'm trying to go with what we've got as far as 6A. Just some of the jockeying around for the regions. I know that
one thing,
for example, Oxford that I've been with the last couple of years, they leave the region that had Albertville, Fort Payne, Brewer, and instead now it's Clay Chalkville and Gardendale and Huffman, as well as Pinson Valley and Center Point. So you had a little change there, obviously, in a different region, and they move like for example, Central Clay County and 5A moved to the north, so they're no longer in the south. Coach Michael Short is watching us there. They moved from 5A to 4A. So today it all came out, and from what I understand, talking to some of the coaches this afternoon, as one told me earlier today, you better have minutes on your phone and your battery be charged today because everybody's calling trying to figure out non-region games and how all that's going to shake out.
Coaches are already meeting today. There were a lot of regions that had meetings today. I know of one 5A region. They met today at 12 noon, going ahead and getting their region schedule, because you have to figure out who's going to play who in the region, schedule, get that set, and then start finding non-region opponents and go out and doing that. So that's already going on. One of the things that happened, it's also interesting to me, teams that move into a classification for the first time ever. And in 6A, Eufaula, never been in 6A, moving up for the first time ever from 5A to 6A. And also Southside of Gadsden, Southside for the first time ever moving down from 6A to 5A.
And you got Talladega that was a 6A not long ago, and they are now in 4A.
Yeah, moved from 5A. They're at 4A for the first time ever. Lincoln moving from 5A back down to 4A. Munford, a team that has never been a 5A, moving up from 4A to 5A. Cedar Bluff, a team that's never been anything but a 1A. They moved from 1A to 2A and move into the same region with Fife. So I'm sure the folks in Cedar Bluff are really excited about that, not only moving in there with folks like Fife, but Sandrock and some other teams that moved down from 3. I believe North Sand Mountain moved into that region. I think Sylvania maybe moved into that region. So they really got a shock to the system moving up from 1A to 2A. So it's always interesting to see these teams that have never been in a classification move to those classifications. So those were some of the notables that stood out to me.
And the thing about it was we were able to go on and make a link on this on our Facebook page there to kind of give you an idea of the new classifications and everything. And so a lot of it came down at about 10 o'clock this morning. Folks were still trying to digest it and kind of look around, as we had an opportunity to break it down as much as we could for the last little bit. But it's kind of a tough thing to go ahead and figure out. But and you got, like I said, it's just you break them down one by one, and you and I have tried to talk back and forth as much as we could today to look at the regions themselves.
And of course, we're going to concentrate on football. As we said, this is high school football, Alabama. There'll be a lot of conversations about other sports as well, but we've been looking at football. 1A just got unbelievably tough.
It really did.
Lynette, who might win a state championship in 2A, moving down to 1A for the first time ever. Elba, for the first time ever, moving from 2A to 1A. They were a team that has been in the state championship a couple of times in the last 4 to 5 years, in the quarterfinals this year. St. Luke's Episcopal out of Mobile move into Class 1A as well, and they were a team that lost by 4 points last week in the quarters. It's as good as any team in the state, I think, in 2A. And then you got Mars Hill Bible. Mars Hill Bible was a team that really made a lot of strides this year, made the 2A playoffs, only lost by a point at Sandrock in the first round. They're moving back down to 1A. So you got 4 really good 2A playoff teams, I mean really good 2A teams, that are moving down in the Class 1A to join folks like Pickens County and Sweetwater and Wadley and, all those teams, Maplesville, that are already there. 1A just really, as far if you want to take one division that really got tougher, I think 1A is the one that really got tremendously tougher because of reclassification.
There were, 4 teams that are playing tomorrow night to get to the state championship that were reclassified. You got St. Paul's went from 5 to 6. You had Clark County and Hillcrest Evergreen that jumped from 3 to 4.
Yeah, that's your South Alabama championship game, as we mentioned, in 3A, and both of those teams moving up to 4 together next year.
Well, and Lynette moving down.
Sax
is another one.
Sax is another one they moved from 4A to 3A. They've kind of been bouncing back and forth between 4A and 3A. But just think about this, Tommy. Sax could be in the state championship game in 4A. Piedmont could be in the state championship game in 3A. And next year they will be in the same region with each other.
And Coach Short said something about Ranburne there. You look at Ranburne's new Region 5. Check that, Region 6. Cleveland, Gaston, Ohatchee, Ranburne, Westbrook Christian, West End, and Woodland.
Wow.
So those are the new classification, new region there for Ranburne. Now, one thing that we're going to say before we get on out of here, we got tried to break it down as much as we could. We urge you to go in there and look at it. We'll talk about it again next week. But we want to, you'll see the comment down there at the bottom of the page that we've just gotten in from Stacy Mills. This is something that we have been planning. As we mentioned earlier, John and I will be in Tuscaloosa next week from basically Wednesday till Friday night. So as far as the High School Football Alabama page, we are going to be broadcasting from Bryant-Denny Stadium. Stacy has been able to set that up, and we're going to have a Facebook Live streaming station that's going to be inside the press box of Bryant-Denny. So next week, you and I will be joining folks from there, and we're able to bring our program. And we may do this a couple of times because I think we may do one every basically Thursday and Friday to kind of bring folks up to date with what's going on. If we find another opportunity, we'll jump on there and do it again. So you need to keep this logged into your Facebook, and then that way you can go on and be able to check out things from the press box. And you never know what other folks we may grab walking by that'll jump on the air with us.
And I think next week we'll one of the things we'll probably do during one of those shows is dive into every class and every region for next year in 2018 and kind of go region by region as far as the changes that happen, because every region had some kind of a little change, and we'll detail those for you next week here on High School Football Alabama. Also, we'll go ahead and tell you that you may not know this, it gets lost in the shuffle, but this year, the way the high school schedules worked out, the season started a week later.
Yeah.
That's why the Super 7 happening after the SEC championship game, and we had the quarterfinals now being played the week of Thanksgiving. That will be true again next year. The first games will not be until August 23rd and 24th. You won't start the playoffs till November, and the state championship games down at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn next year will not be until that second week in December after the SEC championship game. So the same schedule that we had this past football season will be in effect for next season as well.
Right. So keep an eye on that. Again, the semifinal games are coming up tomorrow night. Next week it's the Super 7. So busy time of the year for us, and we're going to, again, I will be at Pinson Valley tomorrow night with the Pinson Valley Clay Chalkville game on the NFHS network, and that is with Stacy Mills, also with Jerry Young. Looking forward to being able to broadcast that game tomorrow night. You get a chance to go watch Piedmont, Randolph County, and again, even though the Pigskin Roundup is done, man, our job never is, and you've got a great game to check out.
I'm going to do a little scouting because we'll have that 3A championship game, and of course, one of those teams, either Piedmont or Randolph County, will be in that 3A title game. So it gives me a chance to watch Randolph County for the second week in a row. Will allow me to watch Piedmont, I think, for the third time this year. I've seen them play twice, and that will be my third time to watch them. So I'll be on the sidelines up at the Field of Champions in Piedmont for that game, and there'll be some tremendous, in that game, competitive balance.
That's what it will be.
It will be competitively balanced between Randolph County and Piedmont.
And keep in mind that with John and I doing the 3A and the 4A games next week, if your team makes it in either of those classifications, you can private message me. Tell me who I need to talk to, and we'll get information. We'd love to have all the comments that we could for you to let us know about those teams that we will be covering next week in Tuscaloosa. Hey, have a great weekend. Enjoy some semifinal football game tomorrow night. Once again, I'll remind you, Kevin Moon, Cheehaw Music Company, is our proud sponsor of High School Football Alabama. If you're interested in sponsoring our program and reach out to about 1,300 high school football fans across the state of Alabama each and every week, you can private message me and find out more. But if you're looking for that Christmas gift, go to Kevin Moon and Cheehaw Music Company Facebook page and find out about some great deals, and he'll take care of you. Great guy to know, so we encourage you to do that. John, that's it for today, man. We'll join him again next week, and we'll be at Bryant-Denny Stadium. How about that?
Bryant-Denny Stadium, one of the top facilities in all of college football. Always a pleasure to go down there and broadcast games, and, hey, there's always there's a place down there called Dreamland in Tuscaloosa.
There is a place called Dreamland.
Like that,
yeah.
So we may be checking out some of those places.
That may be where we broadcast from. How about that? All right, guys, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week with more High School Football Alabama.